This is Access Tech Live.
Back now, Wednesday's Samsung Unpacked Highlights event was obviously the foldable products that we were talking about earlier, in particular the Galaxy Z Fold 6 and the Galaxy Z Flip 3. Now, can I just say, Mark, I am amazed that we're up to number 6 in these devices. It feels to me like we should only be on the third generation. Where's the 6 coming from? Are you a fan of these? Because I'll be honest, from my point of view, I'm not sure if it's something I would go for or buy. Maybe the Flip. Not the Fold. What about you?
You know what? The Flip, definitely. I love the form factor. It's hard to, as a child of the 90s, you know, having the original Motorola Razr and stuff like that, I love the form factor.
Yes.
The fact that you can get the smartphone in that package, that's really cool to me. I've not had a long enough time, Stephen, to really play with them and experience them. So I can't really weigh in on the devices themselves, but I am a little jealous when I see people using them. I am kind of like, oh, I kind of want that extra screen real estate when you're out in the road and you're doing stuff. That could be kind of cool. I think about accessibility. If you've got a little bit of vision and you use screen zooming, you get more screen real estate. So that is kind of cool. But honestly, the thing that stood out for me from this event was the Galaxy Watch Ultra. Like, obviously, it's a clear, blatant ripoff of Apple, and obviously trying to go head-to-head, down to the orange accents, right? Other than the round face, they're clearly going after that. You know, it's light, but it's also bulkier. What intrigues me, though, honestly, is the sleep apnea detection. That's something that this is the only device, only smart wearable that has actually got approval to detect sleep apnea medically. And that's interesting to me as someone who actually has sleep apnea. So I'm curious to try that out and to see if it actually thinks that I do or don't.
Yeah, that is so cool. I mean, these health features are just improving all the time. And, you know, it is, I mean, clearly, as you say, there's no doubt at all, the Galaxy Watch Ultra is just a complete rip-off of the Apple Watch Ultra. It even has what's called a quick button. What does that sound like? It sounds like action button to me. I think it is exactly that. You know, it's interesting, though, you mentioned, just to jump back for a second, you mentioned on the folds, you were talking about the accessibility. There was one feature that I don't think we touched on, which I thought was really cool, and that is that you can use both sides of the phone. Remember when you fold the phone, essentially you have a phone
You've got a screen on the
outside of both sides. Yeah. Same with the Flip as well, to some degree. But you can use translation tools with this, so you can see you're saying, and you know, you can see what the person's saying to you in their language. So you can read it, and they can read in their language. And you can see it from either side of the device. You can have a conversation with someone without having to speak into the phone, hold the phone up, etc. So, you know, I think that's a really cool feature as well. But I've got to say one thing, though, about the watch. The watches are great, and I get it from a visual point of view. I mean, I love the design of these. I think it's nice to have something different. What was it called? A squircle? Is that what you call it?
Squircle. Let's go with that.
Me. Yeah, square circle, right? So
yeah, exactly.
It sounds cool, it sounds good and all that. My question is, I have tried so many of these Android watches, and I have never managed to be able to use one successfully. The power in them just never seems to be there. I've heard early rumors that they're not quite as powerful. And I do have a question about this, and I know we're going to be talking to Samsung about this at some point. But, you know, I just want to know, is it the hardware inside the device that's the problem? Or is it the operating system, the One UI software that runs on the watch? Is that the problem? Because there's a lot of lag when you're, even visually, people are saying, I'm seeing mainstream reviewers saying it's a bit of a nightmare to navigate around, it's slow. And of course, the problem is if it takes a long time for a graphic to change on the display, that slows down the speech response for someone like me using TalkBack. So that may be the problem. I think I fixed it.
I'll ask the question, Stephen.
Who's going to fix it?
Yeah, no, I'll ask that question. I think, you know, if you look at other watches too, they've got Google Wear OS. Like, there's so many different options out there. What intrigues me about Samsung is they talk about all these features of the Galaxy AI. Some of the features they talked about, or people have been demonstrating, this is what people are amazed with, by the way, are being able to do like stick figure drawings and have it converted to like a real image of some kind in various styles. I'm curious if these are Samsung specific, or are these Google features that are in Android that we're going to see in a couple months on Pixel devices, right? You know, because if you think back to the last time they introduced like Circle to Search, that appeared to be a Samsung Galaxy AI feature, but it rolled out to Google devices within a couple weeks. So do we have an answer to that? Another question I'm going to ask Samsung for sure to see if that's what helps them differentiate or not.
I can answer that to some degree, because we do know that there has been a regular conversation between Samsung and Google. They partner up on a number of areas. And actually, one area in particular they do team up on a lot is accessibility. So a lot of features will come out on Samsung devices first and then be built into Google Android. So it is interesting to see how they partner up on accessibility. There is no doubt, therefore, that they're working on other areas. And of course, AI is one of them.
Yeah, I got to bring something up that was interesting, and I got a personal story to tell to kind of put a little PSA out there. So Apple's issued a new security guidance for iPhone users because there's been a lot of cyber attacks threatening over 1 billion devices, their iPhone and their iCloud ecosystems. They're warning people that hackers are using social engineering techniques, posing as Apple employees, trying to get people to log in to their iCloud account, which really isn't a real iCloud page. And this is something that happens a lot in the online world. They try to get you to click a link. It looks like your bank login, looks like an Amazon login, looks like your iCloud login, and it's so convincing that people say, oh, let me try to log in. It doesn't work. So they're like, oh, it doesn't work. So they keep trying it. And what's happening is the second you do that, some malicious actor is actually collecting your information. And while you're trying to figure this part out, they're going into your account and they're changing passwords and stuff like that. This is an online way of doing it. And of course, there's a lot of ways that people can try to combat that. Obviously, check links. If you don't see apple.com on the link, if you obviously there's small things like that where you can just hover over a link to see what it's like. You've always told me that with screen readers, it's great because as you scroll through the screen with a screen reader, it tells you what the link is. So you might be able to catch it a bit better. But I was sitting having dinner with my family the other day. It was a long day. It was 7 o'clock. And I got a call from RBC, my bank of choice here in Canada. And it said RBC's phone number on the screen. I didn't even think twice, okay? I answered the phone and they said, hey, did you make a charge for Air Canada? I make charges for Air Canada all the time. I travel a lot. I'm like, no, I didn't. I'm like, which card are you talking about? They said, well, it's your virtual Visa debit card, which I have. Okay, that's great. He's like, do you have the card on you? Was it stolen? I'm like, that's a good question. So I run upstairs and I check through my cards. I'm like, no, I have the card on me. And then I realized, oh, wait, the card I have is expired. So now my mind is going, oh, did the new one come in the mail and someone intercepted it? So he asked me, can you confirm the expiry date on that card? I'm like, yeah, it expired. He goes, oh, that's interesting. So we think that there was, fraud, and we flagged it, and we want to help you enable a second factor of authentication. So they said that anytime I'm going to use the card in the future, I'll get a text message. I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. Now, in the meantime, I did find the replacement card that I had. So I'm like, oh, wait a second, it wasn't compromised. He's like, okay, good. Let's add that feature, the text feature. He goes, can you confirm the number, the digits starting with 4519. All RBC client cards start in 4519. So I'm sitting there, and again, my flag is not up. Like, it caught me during dinner. I wasn't thinking about anything. And I start reading the numbers off, and I was 4 digits away from finishing the number on the card. And I stopped myself, and I said, you know what? Can I get your name and your client, your employee ID? I'm going to call you guys back just to be safe. And that's when he started to get aggressive. This is when he started to say, sir, do you see the number I called from? I'm like, yeah, I can do that myself. I can fake any number when I call out. That's when I realized, okay, I just saved myself a boatload of trouble. I hung up, called RBC, and of course they said, listen, we don't ever ask you for a number. We know that information. We don't ask you for expiry dates. It's a good thing you caught it. And it got me thinking about, some of the people in my life, some of the elderly relatives who would not even question this. And I was able to go through this, and my flags weren't raised until that last minute. Can you imagine how many people they actually get with this? And the fact that Apple's putting out this warning is something that, we got to put this out there. You got to really be careful and don't give out any information. If there's any flag in your head, any suspicion, just stop, because that could have led down a very dangerous rabbit hole.
So Apple are flagging this to alert people to this, but are they doing anything to stop it happening in the future?
What can they do, Stephen? Like, what can they do to stop somebody from taking a screenshot of a login page, cloning it, and other people going out and calling them? There's not much that any company can do other than try to protect people by saying, add two-factor authentication, getting the message out, letting people know we don't do this. We never ask you for your number. We never reach out to you with this information. There's so much information that's out in the world that's public information that if someone calls you and says, Stephen, Scott, I just want to confirm this is your address, right? And they know your address because somewhere in the world, your taxes is public information. And they know, for example, how client cards start with, I'm actually a client of RBC, so they were able to get me hooked in pretty quick, and I didn't think anything of it. But I don't think there's much that any company can do to try and figure that out. Do you think so?
No, I don't. And I think you're right. I mean, you're right about two-factor authentication. That's really important that we enable that. Of course, the challenge for a lot of people is knowing what that even means, right? If you say to someone, enable two-factor authentication, they don't have a clue what you're talking about half the time. So that's another issue we have to consider. And of course, it's on us as well here on shows like this to talk about this and to make people aware of the tools that are available to them to make sure that they are making themselves and ourselves secure, because like you say, I don't pin this to elderly people particularly. I think anybody can be caught by this, and that's proven just by you. You're a very techie person, and you were caught out. Potentially.
Stephen, one other thing I wanted to throw out there, Google, about an hour and a half ago, you know the Immersive Maps feature they launched a couple of months ago, mostly in U.S. cities? It's kind of like a new way to explore the world. They mix aerial photography with the stills of the local, and they show you, landmarks and stuff like that in a way more immersive way. They've now launched that in some Canadian cities. It's going to be available in Calgary, Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, and Edmonton, and it's available right now, which is pretty cool. All you got to do is open Maps on your device, search for the landmark that you're looking for, and you can actually hit the little icon in the bottom left-hand corner, and you get the whole immersive view of what's going on. Pretty neat service, pretty neat feature, and I love how they push these out slowly but surely over time, and it's nice to see it available in new cities. I know it's not even available, I think, in Glasgow yet, so you can't experience it.
No, I can't. But, they have added so many new features and, particular accessibility features like, accessible businesses, more information about landmarks as well. If you're using TalkBack on your Android device, you can hold your phone up and it will give you more information about how to find the door of a building once you've been navigated to it. So many cool things coming from Google and Android for sure. It's great to see them develop this.
Stephen, we're going to take a quick break. Coming up, you had a chance to play with the Rabbit R1 AI device. I'm excited to hear about that. I'm curious to know how accessible it really is. But before that, we're going to meet a really, really cool young developer from Toronto who developed an app to help her own family that won an award at WWDC. We'll get to that and more after a quick break here on Access Tech Live.
There's more Access Tech Live to come. Get involved and have your say at Access Tech Live on social media. We'll be right back.